The sky above Earth had always been a peaceful one, a vast expanse of stars and celestial wonders, largely ignored by the people who walked the planet's surface. That was, until the first signal was picked up, an anomaly deep in space, far beyond the reach of Earth's most advanced telescopes. It was faint at first, a barely noticeable blip on the radar of the solar system's most powerful instruments, but it wasn't long before the signs grew more distinct. Ships. Dozens, maybe hundreds, moving in a formation unlike anything ever seen before. At first it was dismissed as a natural phenomenon, a comet or an asteroid field, perhaps. But as the hours passed, the evidence mounted. The movement was too precise, the trajectory too calculated. It wasn't a coincidence. Earth was being washed. The world's leaders scrambled, unsure how to respond. International protocols for alien encounters hadn't even been drafted, let alone practiced. An emergency meeting of the United Nations was convened, and panic began to ripple through the masses as the first experts analyzed the approaching ships. What they uncovered sent shockwaves through every capital on Earth. The vessels weren't from any known spacefaring civilization. They were from the Galactic Empire. The Galactic Empire, a ruthless regime that spanned countless star systems, had long been the subject of whispered rumors among the galaxy's outer rim colonies. Their reach was vast, and their technology was incomprehensible to any race not yet part of their vast dominion. But the Empire had never ventured this far before. The proximity to Earth's solar system was unprecedented, and it could only mean one thing: Earth was now a target. For days, the people of Earth did not know whether to be afraid, to flee, or to fight. Governments around the world fell into disarray, unable to unite under the stress of the unknown threat. But amidst the uncertainty, one thing was certain: Earth was not prepared. The planet had barely ventured beyond its own system, and its greatest achievements were still confined to the early stages of space exploration. No one had expected a force as overwhelming as the Empire to ever take interest in a planet so isolated. News reports began to filter through, showing footage of the Empire's fleet, a massive armada of dark ships, all sleek and menacing, filling the void of space as they drew nearer. The ships were unlike anything humanity had ever seen, their armor glinting in the starlight, reflecting a terrifying power. In their wake, the Empire's fleet left a sense of dread. The Earth's leaders knew they had only moments before the invasion would begin. An emergency broadcast went live, and Earth's president stood before the camera, his face pale but resolute. "The Galactic Empire is real," he said, his voice trembling slightly but firm. "And they are coming for us." The message was broadcast to every home, school, and business across the globe, sending a ripple of fear through the population. As the broadcast ended, the president's voice was replaced with emergency signals and the sounds of scrambling military communications. But even as Earth's political leaders met to formulate a response, something remarkable began to happen. Deep within Earth's underground bunkers and classified research facilities, scientists and engineers who had spent decades working on classified military projects began to stir. They had been preparing for something like this for years, though they never dreamed it would come so soon. They had built ships, weapons, and defense systems with one goal in mind: to defend humanity from the unknown, from threats far beyond their own understanding. As the Empire's fleet continued its advance, Earth's military commanders were forced to make the most difficult decisions of their lives. They had only one option: fight or perish. And so, Earth's first true fleet was born, not from the world's most powerful countries, but from the collective ingenuity and resourcefulness of humanity itself. The fleet that would defend Earth would be the first of its kind, a blend of every nation's technological advancements and a testament to the strength of the human spirit. The people of Earth may not have known what was coming next, but one thing was certain: they were not going to go down without a fight. The days that followed Earth's first confirmation of the Empire's arrival were a blur of frantic activity. World leaders had gathered in an unprecedented global summit to determine the next course of action. But there was one thing that was painfully clear. Earth, as it stood, was hopelessly underprepared. The cities, the technologies, the resources, everything seemed insignificant in the face of the massive, looming threat from beyond the stars. The Empire's ships were already visible to Earth's most advanced telescopes, slowly closing in, a relentless force that appeared unstoppable. Yet, amid the growing panic, there was an undeniable spark of determination. Earth's military leaders knew they could not afford to simply wait for annihilation. They needed to act now to find any means of resistance, no matter how slim the odds. The Empire's fleet, though colossal, had weaknesses. Intelligence gathered by a handful of Earth's best minds suggested that the Empire's reliance on overwhelming firepower might be their greatest vulnerability. Humanity's strength, they realized, was in their ability to innovate, to adapt, and to work together as one. In underground labs and secret facilities, work was already underway. For decades, a global collaboration between Earth's leading scientists, engineers, and military strategists had been quietly preparing for an eventuality like this. The result was a fleet of ships, a series of state-of-the-art war vessels unlike anything humanity had ever built before. They were sleek, fast, and equipped with technology that could rival anything the Empire had. Shielding systems, advanced missile systems, and AI-driven tactics that could outmaneuver even the most advanced alien forces. The ships, codenamed Defender class, were born out of humanity's desperation, but also out of its unyielding belief that they could still stand tall in the face of overwhelming odds. They were not just machines. They were the culmination of human ingenuity, a powerful statement of defiance. As these ships were being assembled, their crews, carefully selected from all corners of Earth, underwent intense training, many of them with little to no space combat experience. But what they lacked in knowledge, they made up for in grit. For the first time in history, soldiers from every continent would stand side by side, representing the united humanity against the most formidable adversary the galaxy had ever seen. Captain Sarah Dalton, one of the first to command one of these new ships, was thrust into the role of leader before she felt ready. An experienced fighter pilot, Dalton had earned her reputation through years of service, but she was just one person in a fleet of untested crews. As Earth's leaders began to grasp the magnitude of the threat, Dalton found herself thrust into a war that no one had anticipated. With her steady hands gripping the helm of the Eagle's Fury, one of the most advanced warships ever built, Dalton would become humanity's first hope. The world watched in awe as the first of Earth's ships were launched into space, gleaming under the sunlight as they ascended through the atmosphere. In their wake, the enormity of the Empire's fleet grew more and more apparent. Thousands of warships, their dark hulls casting ominous shadows across the solar system. But the newly formed human fleet wasn't deterred. These ships, though smaller in number, moved with precision and purpose, coordinated by the most sophisticated AI systems humanity had ever developed. As the ships cleared Earth's atmosphere and joined the rest of the fleet, the enormity of what was happening began to sink in. Every man and woman aboard those ships was carrying the weight of humanity's survival on their shoulders. These weren't soldiers from just one nation. They were the representatives of an entire planet, unified in their determination to defend their home. There was no room for hesitation, no time for second-guessing. The fight was about to begin, and Earth's fleet was ready to make its stand. In the control rooms, the tension was palpable. Dalton's crew, filled with a mix of seasoned soldiers and newly trained recruits, was ready for the unknown. As they prepared to face a force more powerful than anything they had ever seen, there was no fear. Instead, there was resolve, a fierce, unbreakable will to protect everything they held dear. Humanity's first steps toward confronting the Empire had begun, and in the face of unimaginable odds, Earth's fleet would soon show the universe exactly what they were capable of. The first wave of battle arrived much sooner than anyone had expected. As Earth's fleet moved into formation, it became clear that the Empire was not going to waste time. The silence of space was shattered by the first energy blasts fired from the Imperial dreadnoughts, powerful beams of energy that blazed toward Earth's defensive ships. The Earth fleet, though outnumbered, responded with a series of calculated maneuvers, darting around the massive Imperial vessels and launching their own counterattacks. Captain Sarah Dalton stood at the helm of the Eagle's Fury, her pulse steady despite the chaos unfolding around her. The AI systems on board her ship gave her an edge, immediately calculating trajectories and weaknesses in the enemy fleet's formation. Yet the sheer scale of the enemy was overwhelming. The Imperial ships, larger and more imposing than any human vessel, loomed ominously in the distance. Despite their best efforts, Earth's fleet struggled to match the firepower of the enemy's colossal warships. "Captain, the Imperial dreadnought is targeting us," shouted Lieutenant Raymond, the communications officer aboard the Eagle's Fury. He looked up from his console, his face etched with tension. "They're locking onto our shields." Dalton's mind raced. She knew that their shields were the only thing standing between them and total destruction. But even the Defender-class ships weren't invincible. The Empire's energy beams had the potential to cut through anything, given enough time. "Divert power to the aft shields. Evasive maneuvers, now," Dalton commanded, her voice steady and resolute. The Eagle's Fury shot forward, twisting and turning as the ship dodged the deadly beams. The Imperial dreadnought fired again, but this time, Dalton had anticipated the move. She steered the ship into a sharp roll, narrowly avoiding the blast as it grazed the hull, sending sparks flying from the surface. The Eagle's Fury shook violently, but Dalton held firm, guiding the ship back into position for another strike. "Target the starboard engine of the enemy ship," Dalton ordered. "Fire at will." The ship's advanced missile systems engaged, launching a series of high-speed projectiles toward the dreadnought. The first few missiles missed, the Empire's shields absorbing the impact without a scratch. But the next round found their mark. A flash of light erupted from the enemy's engine section as an explosion sent the dreadnought veering off course. It wasn't enough to destroy the ship, but it was a vital blow to its mobility. Across the battlefield, similar skirmishes unfolded. The Defender-class ships, though still new and relatively untested, had proven themselves capable of keeping the Empire at bay. Earth's smaller ships used their agility to strike at the heart of the Imperial fleet's formation. Human ingenuity, born from years of preparation and years of desperation, was slowly chipping away at the overwhelming strength of the Empire. Despite their advanced technology, the Empire's fleet was disorganized in the face of such unexpected resistance. Their commanders, overconfident in their superiority, struggled to maintain control as Earth's fleet moved with deadly precision. The Imperial ships fired again, trying to break the human forces with sheer firepower, but the Defender-class ships used their advanced shields and rapid evasive maneuvers to avoid the brunt of the attacks. For the first time, the Empire's forces were beginning to realize they weren't up against an easy target. Humanity, the once dismissed species on the far edge of the galaxy, had proven that they were capable of more than just survival. The Empire's arrogance began to show cracks as more of their ships fell to Earth's relentless strikes. As the battle raged on, Earth's fleet pressed its advantage, attacking with surgical precision. The skirmish wasn't over yet, and victory was still far from certain. But the first signs of hope were beginning to emerge. Earth's forces, though vastly outnumbered, had made an impact, one that even the Empire could not ignore. Captain Dalton's voice rang out through the command deck, full of resolve. "Keep pushing. We're not just fighting for our survival, we're fighting for our future." The battle was far from over. Despite their early success, Earth's fleet was still facing an uphill struggle against the sheer might of the Imperial Armada. The Empire's ships, though disrupted, were relentless. Earth's Defender-class vessels had made their mark, but they were beginning to show signs of wear. Shields were weakening, ammunition running low, and repairs were becoming increasingly difficult. The tide of war had not yet turned decisively in humanity's favor, and every ship in the fleet was pushing itself to the brink. Captain Sarah Dalton knew the stakes better than anyone. She stood at the command center of the Eagle's Fury, scanning the battle unfolding across her holographic display. Her ship had sustained damage from the Imperial dreadnought's retaliatory fire, and the crew was working at full capacity to keep the vessel operational. It was a battle of endurance now. Who would last longer, the Empire's unyielding fleet or humanity's resourceful defenders? "Captain," Lieutenant Raymond said, his voice tense, "we've detected a weakness in their formation. The Empire's flagship, Abyssal Vengeance, is positioned at the center of their fleet, surrounded by heavy escort ships. If we strike there, we might be able to disrupt their command structure." Dalton turned toward him, her eyes narrowing. The Abyssal Vengeance was the heart of the Imperial Armada, the vessel from which their commanders operated and issued orders. If it were destroyed, it could cripple the Empire's coordination, causing chaos within their ranks. It was the chance Earth needed. "Prepare the strike team," she ordered, her voice firm. "We're going after the Abyssal Vengeance. This is our moment." The plan was risky. Earth's fleet had already been worn down, and launching a direct assault on the flagship would draw the full force of the Empire's defenses. But Dalton knew they had no other choice. The Imperial commanders, confident in their dominance, had allowed the flagship to remain at the center of their formation, an arrogance that might cost them everything. As the Eagle's Fury and the other ships prepared for the assault, the skies above Earth seemed to darken further. The Empire's ships, massive and imposing, continued their relentless bombardment of Earth's defenses. But for the first time, something unexpected happened. The Imperial fleet faltered. A series of communication errors rippled through their command structure. The Empire's ships began to hesitate, slowing their advance as if something had disrupted their coordination. Dalton's instincts screamed that this was no coincidence. The Empire's internal systems were not as invulnerable as they had assumed. Earth's fleet, with their adaptable AI and advanced cyber warfare capabilities, had found a way to exploit the Empire's communications network. It wasn't just a matter of brute force now. It was a war of intelligence. "Target the communication relays on the Abyssal Vengeance," Dalton ordered, her voice cold with focus. "We need to cripple their coordination before we strike." The Eagle's Fury sped forward, using its stealth capabilities to slip past the Imperial ships and into position. The battle was now a race against time. If they could disable the communication network on the flagship, the Empire's forces would be left blind, their leadership unable to issue orders. It was a tactical move that could shift the momentum in Earth's favor. As the Eagle's Fury closed in, Dalton's hands flew over the controls. The ship's advanced systems scanned the massive flagship, pinpointing vulnerable spots in the Empire's communications array. With a deep breath, she gave the command. "Fire." The Eagle's Fury unleashed a focused energy blast that struck the Abyssal Vengeance's communication hub. The blast exploded on impact, sending a shockwave through the Imperial fleet. For a moment, the enemy ships froze in confusion, their coordination shattered. Chaos rippled through their ranks as their once unified forces splintered into disarray. "Direct hit, Captain," Lieutenant Raymond reported. "Their fleet is scrambling. They don't know what's happening." Dalton allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction, but she knew the fight wasn't over. The Empire's fleet was still formidable, but now Earth's forces had an opening. With their command structure compromised, the Imperial Armada was vulnerable. Earth's ships, their tactics now honed by the desperate struggle for survival, moved in for the kill. The tide was turning. For the first time in this battle, the Empire was on the back foot. Earth's unlikely heroes, working together with resolve and innovation, had taken the first step toward victory. The Empire's arrogance had been its undoing, and the human fleet, against all odds, was poised to capitalize on their weakness. But as the battle continued to rage, Captain Dalton knew they would need more than just a moment of success. The real fight had only just begun. The shift in the battle was palpable. Earth's fleet, having successfully crippled the Abyssal Vengeance's communication systems, pushed forward with newfound confidence. However, their success was short-lived as the Empire, realizing the damage inflicted on their command structure, quickly adapted. The momentary chaos in the Imperial ranks began to subside, and their vast war machine began to reorganize with terrifying precision. Captain Sarah Dalton stood at the helm of the Eagle's Fury, her eyes scanning the holographic battlefield. The Empire's response was swift and brutal. What had started as a moment of disarray within their ranks now turned into a coordinated counteroffensive. The Imperial fleet, now realigned and enraged, began to unleash its full might. A new wave of reinforcements arrived, their sleek, monstrous warships appearing out of the void like dark shadows descending upon Earth's forces. "Captain, their second wave is approaching," Lieutenant Raymond reported, his voice urgent. "They've concentrated their firepower on our forward defenses. We're about to be overwhelmed." Dalton's stomach twisted as she watched the numbers on the display. The Imperial Armada had deployed heavy artillery ships and dreadnoughts, which were now focusing their fire on Earth's more vulnerable vessels. The sheer scale of the enemy fleet seemed insurmountable. There were too many of them, and their firepower was overwhelming. The Defender-class ships had been built to withstand a lot, but not this much. "We need to fall back and regroup," Dalton ordered, but her words were met with a wave of resistance from the bridge crew. "Captain," Lieutenant Collins, the tactical officer, said with urgency, "if we retreat now, we lose all momentum. The Empire will crush us with their reinforcements." Dalton hesitated. She understood the logic. The Empire would pursue them with deadly intent, and the Earth's fleet could easily be cornered and wiped out. The battle had shifted in the Empire's favor, and retreat would only delay the inevitable. There was no simple solution. Earth's forces were outmatched in sheer strength. "Reinforce the shield generators and prepare the interceptors," she commanded, her voice unwavering. "We're not running. We're going to make them fight for every inch of space." The decision was made, and the fleet responded accordingly. Earth's warships began weaving through the enemy's incoming fire, launching rapid counterattacks with their energy weapons and missiles. The Eagle's Fury once again darted between larger Imperial ships, its agile frame evading the powerful energy beams that lit up the darkness of space. The first few waves of Imperial blasts exploded around the fleet, but Earth's vessels fought back with coordinated precision, firing missile salvos and laser beams that tore into the massive hulls of the Imperial ships. The battle had become a dance of destruction, a chaotic ballet of high-speed maneuvers and sudden, explosive strikes. Earth's fleet had learned to adapt on the fly, relying on their superior maneuverability and smaller size. They couldn't match the Empire in firepower, but they could match them in speed, unpredictability, and unity. The Defender-class ships moved as one, cutting through the Imperial formation like a knife through butter, leaving burning wrecks in their wake. Despite the resilience of Earth's forces, the Empire's counterattack was brutal. The next wave of Imperial ships was better equipped, and they came in overwhelming numbers. Captain Dalton's heart raced as a massive dreadnought, the Scourge of Zoreth, appeared in their path, its guns powered up and ready to unleash a torrent of destructive energy. "Brace for impact," Dalton shouted, her hands gripping the command chair as the Eagle's Fury rocketed toward the incoming dreadnought. The energy weapons of the Scourge of Zoreth lit up the space around them, and the Eagle's Fury was caught in the blast radius. The ship shuddered violently, alarms blaring throughout the bridge. "We've lost main power to the port side, Captain," Collins called out, his voice tinged with panic. "Hull integrity is compromised." Dalton forced herself to remain calm, fighting to stay focused. "Initiate emergency repairs on the port side and reroute power to the starboard thrusters," she ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos. The battle continued to rage around them. Earth's fleet was battered, but it wasn't backing down. Even as Imperial reinforcements poured in, Earth's defenders refused to give up. With every pulse of energy fired, with every ship that fell, their resolve grew stronger. The enemy might have the numbers, but they did not have humanity's will to survive. And as the battle unfolded, Captain Dalton knew one thing for certain. Earth's fleet was far from finished. This fight had only just begun. The battle had reached a critical juncture. Earth's fleet, battered but resolute, had been forced into a desperate struggle for survival against the relentless might of the Empire. The Eagle's Fury, though heavily damaged, still cut through the chaos with its remaining agility, its crew working tirelessly to keep the ship operational. Captain Sarah Dalton had seen the toll the battle had taken on her people, but she refused to show any sign of weakness. The enemy was relentless, but so were they. "Captain," Lieutenant Raymond said, his voice strained, "we've lost contact with 3 of our support ships. They're gone, swallowed by the Empire's forces. The remaining fleet is holding together, but just barely." Dalton's face tightened as she looked at the displays. The Earth fleet's numbers were dwindling, and the Empire's overwhelming strength continued to push them back. Yet there was something in the air, an unspoken realization that they could still win this, that Earth had the edge in one crucial way: their unity. Unlike the Empire, who fought with the arrogance of those who believed victory was guaranteed, humanity fought for survival and for their future. "We won't give up," Dalton muttered under her breath, as if to reassure herself as much as her crew. "We can still turn this around." The Eagle's Fury danced through the battlefield once more, narrowly avoiding a barrage of energy blasts from an Imperial battle cruiser. Every move felt like a gamble, but it was paying off. The ship's shields were holding, and its weapons were still functional. Yet the bigger question remained: how could Earth's fleet defeat such an overwhelming force? They were running out of options. The Empire had no such limitations. But Dalton wasn't alone in her thinking. Across the battlefield, Earth's commanders were forming a plan, a bold, high-risk strike. The Empire, in its desperation to crush Earth's resistance, had concentrated its forces on key positions, leaving a gap in their formation. It was a rare opening, one that Earth's forces could exploit. "This is our chance," Captain Dalton said firmly. "We take out the Empire's flagship Abyssal Vengeance. If we can neutralize their command ship, we'll have the chaos we need to break their front lines." Her words rang out like a rallying cry across the fleet. They were a broken and battered force, but in that moment, they were united in purpose. The plan was risky, but it was their only shot. If they succeeded, they could turn the tide of the war. If they failed, it would mean the end for humanity. Dalton's mind raced as she processed the details. The Abyssal Vengeance, still reeling from the previous attack, was heavily guarded by 2 of the Empire's largest dreadnoughts. There would be no easy way to penetrate its defenses, but the gap in the Imperial formation was their only hope. "Prepare the strike force," Dalton commanded. "We're going after the flagship." As the Eagle's Fury and its fleet surged forward, they encountered fierce resistance. Imperial ships, sensing the shift in strategy, began to converge on the human vessels, firing on all cylinders. The battle raged hotter, energy blasts lighting up the black void of space. Earth's fleet, despite their losses, pressed forward with one singular goal: take down the Abyssal Vengeance. Dalton's fingers gripped the controls with determination as the Eagle's Fury weaved through the barrage of Imperial fire. The Empire's ships were enormous, their weaponry devastating, but the Earth fleet's tactics were nimble and unpredictable. They cut through the enemy defenses, moving like a swarm of hornets attacking a predator far too slow to respond. "We've reached the target zone," Collins said, his voice filled with urgency. "All ships, prepare for the final strike." Dalton gave a single nod. Now or never. Full speed ahead. With a powerful thrust, the Eagle's Fury broke through the last line of Imperial defenses, headed straight for the Abyssal Vengeance. The flagship loomed large, its dark silhouette dominating the expanse of space. A final, decisive strike could end the Empire's reign over the galaxy, but it would come at a cost. "Fire everything we've got," Dalton shouted. The Eagle's fury unleashed its full arsenal: laser beams, missiles, and energy pulses, all aimed directly at the heart of the abyssal vengeance. The Empire's flagship trembled as it absorbed the onslaught. The shields flickered, straining against the barrage. Then, with a deafening explosion, the flagship's central core erupted in a massive burst of energy, sending shockwaves through the surrounding Imperial ships. It wasn't over yet. The battle still raged, but Earth's fleet had dealt a blow that would be felt across the galaxy. The abyssal vengeance, the heart of the Empire's power, was no more. For the first time, the Imperial Armada hesitated. Their greatest symbol of authority had been destroyed. The tide had truly begun to turn. Earth's fleet, battered but unbroken, the destruction of the abyssal vengeance was a moment of sheer brilliance for Earth's fleet, but the war was far from over. The Empire's ships, though staggered by the loss of their flagship, quickly regrouped, unleashing a furious counterattack. But there was something different now, an undeniable shift in the air. Earth's fleet, despite its heavy losses, had proven that the Empire's seemingly invincible might could be challenged, even broken. For the first time, the Empire found itself on the defensive, unsure of how to respond to this new relentless force. On the bridge of the Eagle's Fury, Captain Sarah Dalton watched the chaos unfold. The holographic battle map before her showed the Imperial fleet in disarray. Ships once neatly organized into a formidable formation were now scattering, their communication systems crippled, their coordination faltering. The destruction of the abyssal vengeance had caused more than just physical damage. It had shattered the morale of the Empire's forces. "We've got them on the ropes," Lieutenant Collins said, his voice laced with cautious optimism. "The Empire's command structure is in chaos. Without their flagship, they're losing cohesion." Dalton didn't let herself feel a sense of relief just yet. They had delivered a devastating blow, but the Empire was not a force to be underestimated. They would regroup, and they would fight back with everything they had left. Still, the destruction of the abyssal vengeance had given Earth's fleet a window, a brief, precious opportunity to press their advantage. "Captain," Lieutenant Raymond said, his voice tight with urgency, "we've received a transmission from the fleet commanders. They want to launch a full assault. With the Imperial flagship down, this could be our chance to finish them off." Dalton considered the options carefully. A full assault would risk everything. Earth's fleet had already suffered tremendous casualties, and the Imperial fleet was still overwhelmingly powerful. But she knew what had to be done. The enemy's morale was at its lowest point. Now was the time to strike decisively, to push the Empire to the brink of collapse. "Prepare for the assault," Dalton said, her voice cold with determination. "This is it. We finish this here." The fleet moved into position, rallying under the banner of Earth's defiance. Their remaining ships, though battered and scarred, were ready. The Eagle's Fury took the lead, its hull torn and scorched from the previous battles, but its spirit unbroken. Every member of the crew knew what was at stake. This wasn't just about victory. It was about survival. It was about sending a message to the entire galaxy that Earth would not be subjugated. The first wave of Imperial ships attempted to rally, their remaining dreadnoughts and heavy cruisers forming a defensive perimeter around their remaining forces. The Empire's ships were large, powerful, and relentless, but they were disorganized. Earth's smaller, faster vessels maneuvered with deadly precision, slipping between the gaps in the Imperial defenses, launching quick strikes, and retreating before the enemy could retaliate. "Lock onto their command vessels," Dalton commanded, her focus unwavering. "We need to finish what we started." The Eagle's Fury surged forward, its energy weapons charging up for the final strike. Earth's fleet followed suit, attacking with everything they had left. Each blast from the human fleet struck with unyielding force, tearing through the gaps in the Imperial defenses. The larger ships, though still dangerous, were no longer the invincible forces they once seemed to be. The Defender-class ships and their allies had found the Empire's weak points and exploited them with ruthless efficiency. The Imperial fleet began to fracture. Their massive ships, once seen as the epitome of dominance, were now crumbling under the pressure of Earth's relentless assault. One by one, the Imperial vessels exploded in flashes of fiery destruction, their once pristine hulls disintegrating as Earth's firepower tore through them. Dalton watched, her heart pounding in her chest. This was the turning point, the moment they had fought so long for. The Empire had underestimated Earth's resolve, and now the full weight of their arrogance was coming down on them. The battle that had seemed so one-sided just hours ago was now firmly in humanity's favor. "We've broken their formation," Lieutenant Collins said, his voice rising with excitement. "Their command ships are down. It's over, Captain. We've won." But Dalton didn't allow herself to celebrate just yet. She knew that war wasn't over until the last ship had fallen. The remnants of the Empire's fleet still fought with desperation, but their spirit had been broken. Earth's victory was no longer a matter of if, but when. "Keep the pressure on," Dalton said, her voice calm but resolute. "We finish them now. No mercy." The final assault began in earnest. The Imperial fleet, now splintered and disorganized, was slowly pushed back into retreat. The once proud Empire was crumbling before Earth's eyes. As the last of the Imperial ships began to fall, the massive expanse of space seemed to exhale, as if a great weight had been lifted. Captain Dalton stood tall, watching the final moments unfold. They had done it. Against all odds, Earth had defeated the Empire. And in that moment, she knew that this victory would echo across the galaxy, a reminder that even the most powerful forces could be brought to their knees by the indomitable will of humanity. The silence that followed the final destruction of the last Imperial ship was deafening. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the battlefield hung in quiet stillness. Earth's fleet, though battered and scarred, was victorious. The once mighty Empire had been shattered. What remained of their forces drifted aimlessly, like a broken titan whose strength had evaporated in the face of human determination. Captain Sarah Dalton stood at the helm of the Eagle's Fury, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't yet believe it. The victory, though earned through blood and sacrifice, was beyond anything they had expected. The Empire, which had once believed it could crush Earth without breaking a sweat, was no more. They had defied the odds, shattered the chains of oppression, and forged a future in the flames of battle. "Captain," Lieutenant Raymond said, his voice quiet with awe, "the battle is over. We've done it." Dalton nodded, but she didn't smile. Not yet. She couldn't. Not while so many lives had been lost, not while the memory of the destruction still haunted her mind. But she knew that this victory meant something far greater. Earth had stood up against the most powerful force the galaxy had ever known and had prevailed. That was something no one would ever forget. Slowly, she turned to face her crew. They were tired, their faces worn and their eyes filled with the exhaustion of those who had endured too much. Yet there was something else there too, a quiet pride, a sense of triumph that couldn't be hidden. "You did it," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "All of you. We all did." The crew's response was a hum of quiet agreement, a collective acknowledgement that they had faced the impossible and had emerged victorious. It was the victory of a united humanity, of people from all walks of life, all races and backgrounds, coming together to defend their home, their future, and their freedom. Back on Earth, the news was already spreading. The entire planet was rejoicing, though it felt surreal. How could anyone process the magnitude of what had just happened? The destruction of the Imperial Armada had seemed like a far-off dream, a thing of myth. Now, it was a reality. Earth had stood its ground and sent a clear message across the galaxy. They were no longer to be ruled by any empire, no longer to be subjugated or ignored. The world watched as the remnants of the Empire's forces retreated into the far reaches of space. Their fleet, once a symbol of absolute power, now scattered like remnants of a dying star. And yet, their retreat did not signal the end of the conflict. No, it signaled the beginning of something much bigger, a new era. Earth was no longer the underdog, the insignificant speck in the vastness of the galaxy. It was a power in its own right. In the weeks that followed, Earth's leaders convened. Captain Dalton was lauded for her role in the victory, but she was quick to deflect praise. "This wasn't just me," she told the world leaders. "This was every man, woman, and child who fought, who stood strong when they were told they were too small to matter. This victory belongs to all of us." As the days passed, humanity began to rebuild, not only their shattered fleet but their future. The war was over, but the scars it had left would remain. There was much to be done, repairs to be made, treaties to be negotiated, and alliances to be forged. But Earth had proven that it could rise above any challenge. The galaxy was watching, and the future was no longer as uncertain as it once had been. The Eagle's Fury and the remaining fleet ships returned to Earth, where they were met with cheers, tears, and the overwhelming gratitude of a people who had just reclaimed their place in the universe. A new era had begun, one where humanity stood as equals among the stars. For Captain Dalton, the fight had ended, but her journey was far from over. She looked out at the stars, knowing that they had changed the course of history. The Empire may have been defeated, but there were still challenges ahead. Humanity had proven that it could face the impossible and win, and now it was time to build a future worthy of that victory. With a steady breath, Captain Sarah Dalton looked out over the horizon of space, knowing one thing for sure: Earth's story was just beginning.